Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on your time zone. Welcome to our last Tableau Analytic user group from the year. It has been an amazing year that we had together, and we hope to see you in 2022, obviously. Just like some data, because we are an analytic Tableau user group. So we have hosted 10 events, and we have welcomed 30 speakers. And we really hope that we have brought the most of it for you. And we will try again on this journey next year. So for the one that is the first time joining this Tableau Analytic user group, what is it? It's really a dedicated Tableau user group focused on analytic across the different products, Tableau Desktop, obviously, Web Edit, and Ask Data. And we always try to provide like how to do things in Tableau in order that you will be better, and we all are learning from each other. So if you want to make sure not to miss any other tag, you can obviously scan the QR code, and we will put in the chat the different information that you will need, including the video. So we have recorded all the different sessions, so you can watch them again in YouTube. I have the chance to organize this session with two amazing speakers, Sedal, that will be here today with me, hey, and Samantha. Samantha is here when we are doing this Europe APAC or US APAC session. So we are really trying to be global and to provide live session across the globe. So let me introduce you a little more. Sedal. Sedal is a desktop specialist, a Tableau feature author, and community equity task force. And obviously, he's a co-leader of this tag. He's really passionate about data, and like we can see on the picture, about sport and wine. I cannot wait, Sedal, to see you in the US with a good bottle of wine. I will bring the French wine. Samantha is a data visualization lead. She's also passionate about data, obviously, and supporting people in their data journey. And she likes Nintendo, but I think she will be here for January. But Sedal, we will tell you a little more about that later. And yeah, about myself, I am living in Switzerland. I am leading a Tableau Center of Enablement for a Swiss bank. And my passion in life are, but not on this order, Tableau, my dog, and chocolate. And I'm also co-leading a Data Plus Women initiative. And I have the chance to be a Tableau ambassador, but yes, that's enough about me. The ground rule. So please share on the chat where you are coming from. If you want make a comment during the chat, that's fine. The chat is here for you. But if you have a question for our speaker, please use the section Q&A so we can have a track, and your speaker for today will be able to read and answer your question. And of course, enjoy. This session is being recorded, and we will send like an email for you to find this session in YouTube. So enjoy and have fun. And I let Sedal introduce our nice speaker for today.
Yes. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I've been trying to help a little bit in the chat. As Donabel mentioned, there are quite a few of you, so we will definitely be trying to monitor chats and Q&A as we go along. But hi, everybody. I'm Sedal McCall. I'm also one of the leads for the Analytics Tug, and we have an amazing panel for you today. We've got Andy, who's going to be talking. He's going to kick us off and talk about new ways to visualize time. Donabel Santos talking about LODs and table counts, which I believe everyone could use more help with. And then Alex will be talking about dashboard prototyping with containers. We'll have some time for questions throughout the discussion, but also, if we have time, we'll also do some questions toward the end. So without further ado, let's get into the discussions. So First off, we have Andy Cotgreave. I'm sure you've seen his face if you've been to any Tableau conferences in the past several years, but his day job is Technical Evangelist Director at Tableau. He has over 15 years of experience and helps customers with media across all sorts of industries. He's a very deep thinker around analytics and lots of the things. I've followed him for some time, and lots of the things that I know, he's very deep in his knowledge. So we're really happy to have him. Outside of Tableau, he also is the host of If Data Could Talk. He's a co-host of Chart Chat and a columnist for Information Age. So he is all over. If you Google him, I'm sure you will find something that he's written or talked about or discussed out in the media world. But for now, we've got the next 45 minutes with him. So I will let you take it away, Andy, and talk new ways to visualize time.
Thank you very much for the introduction. When do I even have time to breathe after I do tend to do so much? Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tableau user group, the analytics user group. Thanks to the leaders of this tug. I think, user groups are the lifeblood of the community. Fun fact, I organized the first ever European user group, possibly the first ever user group in the world, Tableau user group in the world, in 2008, I believe. And we had about 20 people there, and it represented everybody who was using Tableau just about in the UK. It was amazing. These user groups are great places for you all to learn. Will says he's disappointed that I'm not dressed in black makeup and dancing with cows. If you don't know what that means, then go check out IronViz or my LinkedIn profile, where you will find some pictures of that. But I'm afraid today you get the vanilla Andy. So we're going to talk about visualizing time. I've got an hour for this. Maybe we'll go 45 minutes and see what happens. Colette asks a question, cows. Go check my LinkedIn profile and find a post from about 2 weeks ago. All will be revealed. Actually, it won't be revealed. Anyway, we're going to talk about time. So I want to do before I share the screen, I want to do an exercise with everybody. We've got nearly 1,000 people attending. So I want to do a little meditation exercise to think about what time means to everybody on this user group. So what I want you all to do is just relax for a minute. In fact, close your eyes, just relax and think about the present moment. Here we are listening to Andy Cotgreave in this present moment on this fine day in December on the Analytics user group. And now think about tomorrow. Tomorrow is not today, is it? Okay, but now think about where tomorrow is. So what I want you to do, wherever you are, and please everybody around the world do this, point to where tomorrow is. And do it, make it big and loud. Point to tomorrow, right? Everybody, and this is great. I don't do this just for the joy of 1,000 people around the world pointing in some strange direction. I just want us to think about where time is going. So, okay, so I can see, you can all open your eyes now and wonder where we all pointed. So type, where did you point? Just type in the chat, not in the Q&A. Which direction did you point? To the right, to the front, upper right, interesting, in front. Right, I point in front. When we do this, upper right, oh, interesting. We've got diagonal directions. Most people will point in front. And this is, hang on, let me just share my screen now. All right, you can all see my screen. Can you see which way did you point? I'm getting a nod from people. That's good. Let me open the chat so I can see what you're all saying. Yeah. So which way did you point? Most people think of time moving forwards. Some people think of it going left to right. Some cultures have completely different perceptions of time, and they tie it to geographical parts of their region or their neighborhood. And if you want a great book on which direction time is, check out the book Mind in Motion by Barbara Tversky. It's a really good book about the concept of time. Also, when you're pointing to the front, that is the Z plane in terms of human, and it's called the sagittal plane. I bet you never knew that. There you go. That's today's free fact that nobody needed to know. Okay, so as Sadal said, I'm Andy Cotgreave. I've been using Tableau since 2007. It turned my life around when I was an analyst like you, working at the University of Oxford. I've had an amazing 10 years at Tableau since I joined in 2011. and I co-wrote the Big Book of Dashboards, as well as doing many other things. But we're not really here to hear about me today. We're here to talk about time. I'm going to share a bunch of stuff in Tableau. Most of this is going to be in Tableau, just done a little bit of where is time. But I also want to indulge my passion for the history of data visualization by talking about the history of time for a minute. All the resources for this, you can go, this URL is at the bottom of most of the slides, tabsoft.co/time in Tableau. That will go to a bunch of blog posts I wrote. There's also a chapter on time in the book that you can go read. So there you go. Right, now keep using chat, and I'll try and keep my eye on the chat window and on the Q&A and take those as we go. So just give me a moment to line up my windows so I can do that. So if you are given a data set with time in it, how do you visualize it? Answers in chat. How do you visualize it? And since most of you are in America, I will indulge your way of spelling visualize. It's wrong, should be an S, but since most of you are American, I'll go it. Right, left to right, line graph, line graph, line graph. Look at this, it's lines, line, line. Brilliant, that is the right answer, of course. Aha, Wilf said, it depends, I saw it. Special prize to you, Wilf, thank you very much. But line chart is kind of the right answer. Obviously, we can visualize time in a clock, that's fine. We can look at our phone and spinning wheels and contemplate the existential pointlessness of our existence as time passes by while we wait for a YouTube video to load. This is a depressing way to visualize time. But this is what most people say. And hurrah, visualizing time is amazing. This takes advantage of our left to right, well, Western cultural way of consuming information. It uses position and angle, pre-attentive attributes to demonstrate trends. Hooray! But boo! Time line charts are also a problem, because the point of this next 50 minutes is to show that the line chart, while amazing, is going to conceal as much as it reveals. So the answer to everybody who said it, how do you visualize time, is it depends. And it doesn't just depend on the question you have, it also depends, as we'll see, on the shape of the data you have. Before we get to Tableau, whoops, I just dropped my clicker. Let me give you a history. I love the history of data visualization. So pop quiz. In what year was the first chart where time was put on an x-axis in an even units? What year was that? The first chart with the time on an x-axis was, can anybody guess? 2,500 BC, 1750, 1922, 1900, 1600. Napoleon War, that was Menard. In fact, I've got my Menard mug. That was 1879. It's not the right answer. 75,000 BC. Julian calendar yesterday. Thank you for that, Stefan. The Big Bang. Wow, they were doing data viz at the start of the universe. Perhaps not. According to my research, the answer was 1753. There were time-based visualizations going much further back than that, but the first axis, where X represented a uniform time, was 1753. Greg, correct, you got it right, 1753. Thank you very much. And this was a guy, Jacques Barbe-Dubourg, a French physician, botanist, and writer. And he created the Chronographie Universelle in 1753. And what this chart was a timeline of the entirety of human existence, which, as people believed then, was 4,000 years. So up at the top of this, you had an axis that represent every decade for 4,500 years, and all the marks on the chart were people of note, famous people or famous events. And so it was a chart showing the universal history of humanity. So he created this x-axis. Good for him. What he didn't think was how long a piece of paper he'd need to do this. So the actual chart is 18 meters long, 54 feet. 54 feet. It had to fit in this incredible wooden scrolling device. So he created like an iPad scrolling window to view a chart way back in 1753. Amazing. And as you can see, it was foldable and portable. Genius. Annabelle says she thought the first timeline was Joseph Priestley. Well, we go from 1753 to 1765 and Joseph Priestley. Priestley was a polymath in the UK, did amazing things, but he created the chart of biography, which is pretty much the same chart. But his genius was to think, you know what, you can scale an axis to fit the piece of paper that you have and make it so you can hang it on a wall. So again, like Dubourg, you've got an axis showing all 4,000 years of human existence. And he broke it down into types of people like artists, philosophers, barbarians, or soldiers, barbarians, politicians. And each mark represents the lifespan of a person of note. And his zoom in, it was pretty cool. He essentially invented the Gantt bar back in 1765, where he was unsure about the data. He added these 3 little dots, so he was conscious of uncertainty in the data set. Really, really amazing. So genuinely stuff. Now, from 1765, we can then go to 1786. And this chart, which is pretty much the line chart as you would think of it today. This was William Playfair in the Statistical Breviary. This also included the first pie chart. So thank you, William Playfair, for that. But take a look at that chart. It's got annotations. It's got nice grid lines. It's got good use of color. The text is correctly proportioned. It's beautiful. And you can go and build this in Tableau, right? I did. So that's my history of timelines. And here is a photograph of one of my most amazing moments in my entire career in this field. So this is me with Steve Wexler and RJ Andrews at the Library of Special Super Secret or Super Collection Library in Princeton, where you need a lot of permissions to get into this room, seeing the only known copy of Dubourg's work and Priestley's chart of biography and history. And here is Playfair's work as well. I tell you what, this was the most amazing experience ever. That just incredible to see these things in the flesh is so different to seeing them on screen. And you know, if anybody can find that opportunity in their lives, I highly recommend it. It was really cool. And yes, Carl says, yes, I'm wearing the same shirt. I have washed the shirt since that day, but it is the same shirt. Tim says, no gloves. We weren't allowed to touch this. This thing is super fragile. So the person there was the only one who was allowed to touch. They have several copies of these and they were like, just be very careful of this. But this is fairly unique. Nick says, how many people asked for the CSV or table version of the chart? Oh dear, yeah, the reality of modern day analytics. Xiaoming, these are in Princeton in the US. Okay, now, so here we go, the timeline of timelines. And we ended up in 1786 with the line chart. Now, did Playfair's innovation come with a downside? Today, we say very often, and I know nobody on this call would do it, we think, well, we'll just build a line chart and that will be everything we need to see. And I think because Playfair got this so right, and then tools like Excel makes it so easy to make a line chart, we just too often stop at the line chart and don't continue down the analytical path to find the other insights. So here we go. We are going to switch to Tableau and just sort of take a look and think, how can we see data in different ways? Alex says he saw Matt RJ a month ago in San Francisco. RJ Andrews is an amazing person. He's far more into the history of data viz than me. And his book, Info We Trust, is a really good read to think deeply about implications of data and things like that. Right, new ways to visualize time. What I'm going to do is introduce, I think it's 6 different charts, and we're going to talk about why the timeline works and then how a slightly different chart can reveal different insights. So the first data set shows the way the 100-meter male 100-meter sprint record has changed over 100 years. Usain Bolt ran 9.5 seconds back in 2009 and smashed the record. Right now, this is great. Now, the problem with the timeline here is because the line between Jesse Owens setting the record and the next record, the line's going down diagonally. It didn't do that. The record was 9.3 or 10.3 seconds until the 10 seconds it was broken, and then it went down. So if you haven't seen this feature in Tableau, you can change the way a line is drawn in Tableau from a sloping line to a step line and then we get something that is more accurate for this data set. So the record was 10.2, and the record remained 10.2 until Willie Williams set a record in 10.1. So you have that ability to create step charts in Tableau if you want. I'm also going to divert just a tiny bit and say that one of the things I learned very early was a rule saying you always show the 0 on a y-axis. And this data set is one of the reasons that I realized that was a rule you don't need to keep. So when you include 0 on this data set, the chart looks rubbish. It doesn't fill the space, but more importantly, you can't see the relative change of the records. And in this case, human beings will never run 100 meters in 0 seconds. So this 0 is an arbitrary baseline. And when you have data sets where what you really want to do is see the relative change, so long as you're not using bars, because bars are perceived differently, you cannot use the 0. Okay, so that's a step 1, chart number 1. Next one. Next one is a slope chart. This data set shows journeys from 8 different docking stations in the London Cycle Hire Scheme from back in 2017. So it shows number of journeys for 1 year, and you can see the 8 different stations. What's interesting here is the timeline shows that 6 of them kind of went up a bit through the year, but 2 of these stations really had a peak in the middle months, the summer months in the UK, spring and summer and fall. So that's great. But sometimes you might look at the top and have it, or you might have a question: what's the difference between the start and the end of our data, right? If that's the question you're answering, then all the information in the middle becomes redundant. So what we can do is exclude those and create what is called a slope chart. And look, you have all seen something in this slope chart that was completely hidden in the original chart. Albert Gate went from being number 8 to number 1 over this duration of this time. And in fact, even if I undo that filter and keep Albert Gate highlighted, because of all the data in the middle, it's quite hard to actually see that Albert Gate went from 8 to 1. So a slope chart is a really good way of visualizing time when the question only cares about the start and end of the data point. The one I've just built here, I arbitrarily grabbed some marks and excluded them with a right click, but you can build a dynamic slope chart using a table calculation and then hiding data instead of filtering it. And then, as you can see, as I change the filter, the slope chart changes too. Oops. At least if you have multiple months in it. So you can play around with that. Again, I'm not going to go into how to create that now. You can go look at the resources on the URL, which we'll share later. Okay, so that's chart 2, a slope chart. Great for when you just want to see the start and end of the data set. All right, now let's go on to a cycle plot. Same data set, but now plotted. So for each day of the week, how many journeys for each hour of the day? So on 1 o'clock on a Sunday, 111,000 journeys. And from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you can see this commuting peak where there are more journeys at 9 a.m. and 5 a.m. But my question here is, I want to really dive into the hours of 8 a.m. and noon. Well, it's really hard to find 8 a.m. here and then find 8 a.m. Where is it? Here it is, right? I can't get that view. I could just drop weekday off the view completely. Now I'm seeing number of journeys aggregated for all the time of the data set, broken down by each hour of a 24-hour day. And it shows me that commuting peak of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. But if I undo that, Sunday does not have that pattern. So we're sort of over aggregating data and hiding patterns when we do that. So what else can we do? Well, we can do something quite unusual. When we normally visualize time, we will put the bigger time period on the left-hand side and then increasingly smaller time periods as we go from left to right. So day, hour, and then we might go minutes, hour, minute, second, right? But what if we invert that and put hour on the left-hand side and weekday to the right. Well, now we have what's called a cycle plot, which is really good for beginning to explore seasonality. Now I can see what's happening at 8 a.m. across 7 days of the week. So I've highlighted 8 a.m. and the line has 7 dots on it, 1 dot for each day of the week. And we can see the peak day for 8 a.m. is Tuesdays, and nobody's really riding a bike at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. So you get this N shape for the cycle hire scheme at 8 o'clock in the morning over the 7 days. Contrast that with noon, and you get this U shape because more people are riding bikes around lunchtime on Sundays and Saturdays than they are during the week. So you get a U shape. So this is called a cycle plot. It's really good for exploring seasonality in your data. You know, and of course, it doesn't have to be hour and weekday. It can be any 2 time level aggregations. The downside of a cycle plot is that it has to be quite wide, right? It just does take up quite a lot of space. Mark Paul Lee says the week should begin with Monday. However, that is a matter of opinion. It's a good opinion. Also, the data doesn't look as pretty when it starts that way. But for me, a week starts on Sunday. Okay, what else can we do? So the slope chart is quite wide. The cycle plot is quite wide. So you could just put weekdays on color and have hour on the x-axis, and each line represents a day of the week. And now I can see the different pattern, how weekdays have a completely different pattern than weekends. And of course, a chart like this, you can make super narrow. If you only have a tiny amount of space on your dashboard, you can still make this thing quite narrow and it'll still visually work. Okay, so that's a cycle plot, great for seasonality. Now I'm going to continue the seasonality question, and I'm going to switch data sets. And I'm going to use, this is not a nice data set. This is a data set about fatalities on the roads in the US. And, you know, so obviously not a happy data set, a tragic data set, but it is a fascinating data set with a lot of interesting trends in it. And here's the timeline of fatalities on the roads from 94 to 2016. And we can see things were sort of consistently slowly rising to 43,500 in 2005, a drop. And then unfortunately, fatalities have been increasing since 2014. And that increases even when you would allow for miles traveled and journeys made. But my question at the top of this one is, what are the seasonal trends? Similar question to the one we just looked at with the cycle hire scheme. So since Andy just said, let's make a cycle plot, what if we just make a cycle plot? So we'll go year to month, and then I'm going to put year on the right-hand side of month to build a cycle plot. To me, that chart is not very interesting because it turns out that the long-term trend of fatalities over time has been seen in every single month. There isn't such a difference between March and August, say, as we saw between 8 a.m. and noon. So the cycle plot isn't really working for this visualization. What I'm going to do instead is a highlight table. So for this, we're going to take time and put one time dimension on the column shelf, one time dimension on the row shelf, and then instead of putting the continuous measure on the columns or rows, which makes Tableau draw an axis, we're going to put it on the color shelf. Now I've already set the color palette up, but what we have here is a heat map or a highlight table. And suddenly new insights are being revealed. So each cell represents a month, and the color represents the number of fatalities. And various things now pop out. We can see that July 2005 was the day in which with the highest number of fatalities. We can see that the columns of July and August are the concentrations. We can see a real period of, across the board of fewer fatalities from 2009 to 2014. And then we get this concentration of higher fatalities in the summer months of 2015 and 2016. It's a really powerful way of looking at the data. And the great thing about highlight table is you can play around with the aggregations that are on the side. So instead of month at the top, instead of years on the rows, what if I wanted to ask, on which day have there been the most fatalities in this data set? Well, I can just change year to date. And I'm going to change the color palette as well. I'm just going to change the center point. Interesting, changing the start or position of the color palette is a good way to explore data analytically, you know, because you can start highlighting and accentuating things during the exploration phase. Now new information comes to light. So each cell now represents a day of the year, and we see that on the 10th of May, over the entirety of the data set, 2,000 fatalities. And the day in which more people have died than any others are July the 4th, Independence Day, and January the 1st. Now, as I say, I haven't normalized this data according to the number of miles traveled, so I don't know if those days are more dangerous because there are probably more people on the road. Okay, so at this point, let's go back to somebody's question about or comment about the maps from 1750s and 60s. And it's like, did somebody ask for the Excel file version of the data? Many of you, I suspect, are trying to drive your company and organization to adopt data visualization. And many of you are probably meeting the barrier where your boss or your peers or somebody else says, I just want to see the Excel table. I just want to see a table of numbers. Does that sound familiar? I suspect it does. Well, great. Hannah says 100%. Erica says yes. I know there are many of you who are fighting that fight. Yeah, lots of you are saying yes now. Okay, so a highlight table. This visualization could be the gateway drug to start making people think visually. How? Well, I'm going to duplicate some of the fatalities and put that on the label shelf, and then force this to be a square. Now there's your table, boss. There it is. But I've made life a little bit easier for you because I've put color on it, so you know which is the biggest or smallest number. And you know, boss, if you want me to use color to highlight something differently, the biggest percent change, that's fine. I can do this, right? So this is a really nice way to start the people on this journey. Something else you can do is go, yeah, and you know what? If you go and look at this table online, there's this little tooltip. We can pack information into this tooltip, not just the number that you're seeing on the screen, but we can change that and put a simple visualization in that. So what I'm going to do is put in a viz in tooltip, which shows the fatalities during the hour of the day. And now, I mean, I realize this is a really unpleasant data set, but we can see on July the 4th, most of the fatalities happen late afternoon and into the evening as people have finished their celebrations and are driving home. Contrast that with January the 1st, where most fatalities happen between midnight and 4 a.m. Obviously, people driving home from their celebrations. Now, what are we doing here? We're giving people direct access to the numbers, but we're using color to encode highest or lowest or whatever you need to encode to whatever they want to be encoded. And then we're burying a little bit, we're not burying, we're giving access to secondary level questions inside the tooltips. So highlight tables are a great way if you're really trying to fight that fight to start people thinking differently. And you'll have them on line charts and cycle plots and dot plots in no time, I'm sure. Right. Okay, where are we up to? Let's go to, so we've done the highlight table. Yes, the next one. Let me ask you, is it anybody's birthday today? Or this week? Greg, oh, sorry, Nick. Kevin says tomorrow, April says yes, and Greg says yes. And Annabelle says on the 25th. Annabelle's birthday is on the 25th, on Christmas Day. Fantastic. Oh, wow. This is brilliant. There's at least 3 of you who have said yes. Althea, you won't get a free book. So, yes, it's your birthday today. So, great. Many happy returns. I'm delighted that you've decided to spend this special day with us all here in a Tableau user group. Who wouldn't, right? So this data set shows how common is your birthday. I have data for the US and England and Wales. And the color, the darker the color, the more popular that day is in the calendar year. So I'm going to guess those people who said yes are in the US. What is the day? It's the 1st of December. In the US, it's the 149th most popular day on which kids are born. Somebody said tomorrow, 144. In England and Wales, it's the 339th most popular. Who knows why there are these differences in the US? Annabelle, you said the 25th of December. Well, I don't have data for your country, but in the UK or in England and Wales, 25th December is the least popular, apart from February the 29th, day of the year for live births to happen, right? Okay. And I love this data set. This data set contains many, many things. Does anybody have a birthday on the 25th of September? The 25th of September. Will's mum has a birthday, right? Yeah, NC, well done, right? Your birthday's on the 25th of September. So in England and Wales, it's the 26th of September, sorry, the 26th is the most popular day to have live births. 25th of September is ranked number 2 in the UK. Anybody with a little bit of thinking will be like, that is literally 9 months to the day after Christmas Day. Woo! So you can see what the English get up to on Christmas Day. In the UK, a little bit, in the US, sorry, a little bit further back. So look at that. So September births in England and Wales are incredibly popular. And there are other patterns you can see in here. Some people are saying, people don't like to deliver babies on national holidays. 4th of July, virtually nothing happening. You can even see different trends on New Year's Eve. January the 1st in England, 364. Fewer, but the only day less than that is Christmas. But New Year's Eve itself is actually quite common. It's in the middle, and the 30th is number 37. And I find this astonishing. It's like, giving birth and having babies is literally the most natural thing that humanity has ever started doing, and the actual giving birth in hospital is far from random. The highlight table also shows things like this. Look at this horizontal strip for the 13th day of each month in both countries. But people do not like giving birth to kids on the 13th day of a month. In the US, you get this little spike on the 14th of February, the romance of giving birth on the 14th of February. I have 2 teenage daughters. I can tell you, it doesn't feel like a particularly romantic day. Let's not go down that path. I love my children. Anyway, so how common is your birthday? This data set really lends itself to being showed on a highlight table. Now, if anybody on the call can find data set for their county or their state or their country and visualize this data set for their area, then do share with me on Twitter and LinkedIn, because I've seen it for several different countries now, and I love seeing that. Okay. Now, let's develop the highlight table one step further. How's everybody in? Are we all okay? Should we take a moment? Because I'm changing the data set again. The data set now is showing drought in the US. Drought in the US. Right, so what we got here is a highlight table. We've been talking for ages about the highlight table. And here is another fantastic one. It shows year and month and the drought in the severity of the drought index in USA in the lower 48 states. The darker the red, the more severe the drought was in the US that month. And our eyes are drawn very quickly to June and July. Oh, don't crash on me, Tableau. Don't crash on me. Chip R says his brain hurts in a good way. I'll take that as a compliment. And I'm sure I know that's how you meant it. So I'm glad your brain is hurting. Okay, and there you can see the viz and the tooltip showing drought across the lower 48 states in July 2012. All right. Now, every human being who has good eyesight, we all have incredibly powerful eyes. We can actually see tiny, tiny, tiny dots in our field of vision. So what if we put the map inside the square? That seems like a pretty cool thing to do, right? A small multiple. So let's build a small multiple. So I'm going to take state and put that on the detailed shelf. Tableau is now drawing a mark for every state in the data set. And then we're going to add latitude and longitude to the view. Who else in this call can never put latitude and longitude on the right shelf first time? Over 10 years, I finally worked out that latitude goes on the row shelf and longitude goes on the column shelf. And now there you go. So what I've done is tell Tableau to draw a table for dates and months, and then an axis for latitude and longitude. And because state is on the detailed shelf, we get a map of the lower 48. And I'll just switch to, here's one I built earlier, because so here's one I built earlier. Let's go to the last 15 years. And now what we're seeing is 6,000 marks of data, one mark for every state, for every month, for every year, 2007 to 2018. And the highlight table was amazing, right? You know, we've seen great highlight tables now for a bunch of stuff. But look, you can now see much more granular levels of detail. So 2012 July, and in fact, the entirety, if you look at 2012, the year, you can see that while the drought was very severe in the central US states, actually in the Northwest and on the eastern side of the US, the drought wasn't so severe. So small multiples are a really good way of adding granularity to the view. And you can put line charts in here, scatter plots, trend lines, bar charts. Our eyes are incredibly powerful. And again, with Tableau, you've got super interactivity as well. So I've now highlighted California. And even now you can see the patterns of the El Nino and how that creates a cycle of drought and non-drought, drought and non-drought. Yeah, somebody's saying animation. Yeah, the animation on time. I don't have any animation in this workbook, but animation is a fantastic way to do visualization as well. This data set, by the way, was inspired by an article in the New York Times about 5 years ago. And you can go and download this entire data set and create a cool poster. So here we've got the drought index from 1895 all the way to 2008. And there you can see the Dust Bowl year in 1934 when, holy cow, America was in severe drought. Right. Now, so we've looked at many tables. We've looked at many, different ways of visualizing data. And each one was driven by a question. How do I look at seasonality? What are the, how do I look at seasonality? What happens in specific hours? What happens at the start and the end of the data set? So that is choosing the right chart based on the question you want to ask. I also want to prove something else very, very important. The right chart, the data often defines the right chart. So we were looking at the road fatalities data set, and I switched to the drought index to show you a small multiple. Why did I do that? Well, here is road fatalities by state for the entirety of the data set. Let's build the small multiple map for road fatalities across the lower 48 states of the US. So for that, we're going to put year on the bottom and month on the top. And then, right, so I've built my small multiple, but here's a dashboard where it all fits on a single screen. Here is the small multiple. This looks terrible, right? It's actually not a terrible chart. But if you built this chart on your analytical path and your exploration of the data, you would see this and recognize that when you are looking at fatalities, the month and the year doesn't actually have a trend which is more significant than the geographical trend. Every single month, there are more fatalities in California and Texas and Florida. And that is almost 100% certainly because there are just more people in those three states. But the point being, small multiple maps are amazing to look at when the data lends itself to looking at a small multiple map. When you are exploring your data and trying to articulate the best view for the data to share on your dashboards or in your presentations, to emails to the bosses, the chart choice should be determined by the data itself. I love when I hear people say they build their dashboards with a pen and paper and that first. But I think that's a nice creative way to think about what a dashboard could look like. But when you have a pen and a paper, you can draw the perfect line chart or the perfect bar chart for every chart you put on that pencil-based dashboard. I've been in many situations where when that dashboard is then built in Tableau or in any product, they look awful, because guess what? Your data doesn't do that nice upwards trending thing, or it might be sparse. So when you're trying to find the right chart for your data, for your time-based data, for any data you have, the data itself should drive the correct chart as much as what you want it to show. All right, that's that lesson over. Okay, we're on to the last chart type. Here we go. Whew, I hope you're all still ready. We've got 5 or 10 more minutes, and then we'll go to Q&A. Final data set. This one is YouTube views. I've only got this data to like December 2016. I don't think you can get this data anymore in this shape that we have here, and that's a real shame. But from December 2016, here we have daily views for the top 10 most popular videos as of December 2016. And look at that. Adele, 25th of October 2015, 129 million views in a single week. Absolutely bananas. And that's why the line chart's great. Our eyes are drawn to that. And then we go back to this one. This was Gangnam Style by Psy. I mean, prehistory that was all over the internet, and a mere 72 million views in a single week. And there are 7 others. Shake It Off by Taylor Swift is on this. That's my favorite song. Okay, but my question here, Betsy says she's forgotten about Gangnam Style. Yeah, go listen, go and watch the video again. Give them another view. Which video hit 1 billion views first? Well, the timeline shows us some great information, absolutely. But which hit 1 billion views first? I cannot tell that from this chart. Let's build what's called an index chart. First thing we do is we want to show running total, because I want to see them going from 0 views to 1 billion and beyond. So we'll do a running total. Now we can see something, but we still can't really compare. I'm going to add a reference line, a constant line, so we can see the billion. So I'm going to take constant line, drag it on the sum of views, and I'm going to do an American billion, which is 9 zeros, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In fact, before I press enter, does anybody know the hack to add a billion reference line without typing 9 zeros? Two. Yeah, one. Yeah, there you go, Matthew. Correct. So I can type in 1 billion, and there's my reference line. But something I learned doing this talk once before is I can just type in 1B, and that is the same. I can do 1 million or 1M or 1K, and it's a shorthand for doing it. Lots of you got that right. 1E9. Good work, Elizabeth. Don't know what that does. Anyway, okay, so we can see they've all got above 1 billion views, but I don't know when they hit 1 billion views. And the problem with this is when we build a line chart and we visualize time on with it over time, we are not able to compare the growth of things that happened at different times. So we need to change this x-axis into an index where every event starts at 0, and then we can compare. So to do that, again, I'm gonna, don't take this as a teach. You can go and read the blog post about this, but I'll just explain the steps and go moderately fast. So I'm going to take my ad hoc calculation and drag it onto my data window, and that will create a persistent calculation which we can use. So we'll call that running total for the tug. And then I need to take time off the x-axis, but I need it on the detailed shelf. And for the way I build these, I need exact date and a discrete. So I need a discrete data point for every single date in the data set. And then instead of time on the x-axis, I'm going to do an index. Press enter. Doesn't look good yet. We're going to do that using date. And we're going to compute the running total using the date too. And here we have an index plot. What I've done with those calculations is say, well, index particularly is go from 0 to n and increase the index value every time you come across a new date for that song in the data set. And now we have what's called an index chart. Let me just, I have to change the tooltip because instead of week, I want index. Let's make that nice and big. And which one hit 1 billion views first? It was Adele. It took 91, 89, 90 days, a mere 3 months to hit 1 billion views. And that outpaced Justin Bieber, thank the Lord, who took a miserable 140 days to hit 1 billion views. Gangnam Style was pretty slow, 160. But this is a really powerful chart because often you might be doing marketing campaigns. Did this marketing campaign succeed? Did the growth of this web page match the growth of the web page we did last week? I'll show you a real application of this one. This is a copy of a dashboard that's actually based in the book. Annabelle says she could have done an LOD for this. Yes, could have done an LOD too. But what's going on? This is a dashboard actually used by the Information Lab, and it's comparing sales of this quarter against previous quarter and the same quarter last year, and then all of the quarters. And you can see in the 10th week of this data set, this current quarter is tracking higher than previous quarters. So this is an example of an index chart being used to track sales. Right. Whew, that was a whirlwind. Did we see it in Tableau? I hope you agree we saw everything in Tableau. There are a gazillion different ways of visualizing time. Animation I've seen mentioned in the chat. There's just loads of ways. And the great thing about Tableau is that you can explore all these ways until you find the right one. So let's recap. I'm going to leave you with 3 lessons and then take some questions. First lesson, line charts hide insights. Of course, the first chart you build with a time-based data set is a line chart. Of course it is. But as each one of these examples shown, the line chart hides things that the data is telling you. So find the right articulation of your data by exploring it. Secondly, the data can determine the best view. The London cycle hire data makes a great cycle plot, but the fatalities data didn't. The drought data made a great small multiple map, but the fatalities data didn't. So when you are prototyping dashboards, when you're thinking about how you're going to build things, and as an analyst, be driven by the data as much as be driven by the questions or your own imagination, because the data will give you other things. And the final thing is, Tableau makes this stuff easy. All these pioneers of data visualization, we haven't talked about John Snow and Florence Nightingale, Mary Eleanor Spear, they were all using pen and paper and intuiting their way to what feels like the right way to visualize and explore data. And every time you drag and drop something in Tableau, you're sort of continuing this 250, 1,000, 2,000 year of history of us trying to understand the data, the world around us by aggregating and analyze data. So keep going with that. So that's it. Right. So that's it. Let's take questions for a few minutes. I'll happily do that. Before we get to questions, I just want to do a quick plug for Charts Chat. This is a live video series, a video show that I do with Steve and Jeff and Amanda. Steve, my co-authors, and Amanda from Data Viz Society, where we geekily dive into 3 charts and pick them apart, why we like them, what we might improve. And on December the 14th, we've got James and Oliver, who produced the beautiful book, Atlas of the Invisible, to talk about 3 maps from their book. Highly recommend this book, it's really good. If you want some further resources, you can follow me on Twitter, Andy Cotgreave. I do a newsletter called The Sweet Spot. Please do subscribe to that. And if I was to recommend 4 books that I think would completely set your career up as an analyst, I would probably start with these 4. They give you a really good, diverse set of inputs. Whew. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words in chat. And Annabelle, should we go to some questions, or Sidal? Shall I just?
Yes. I don't think that Sidal, you are back, right? Yeah. No. So it's me.
It's you. Yes. Yeah.
It's you have the pleasures of my French accent. Thank you very much, Andy. It was a very cool presentation. Just before going on to the question, and you can already have a look at the question and Q&A to see which question you would like to answer. I would like to apologize to the audience. It seems to have a problem with the webinar, who limit the audience attendee to 1,000, and we were expecting much more. So I really apologize for the one who are watching this video on YouTube later and couldn't join live. So hopefully it will never happen again.
I hope not.
Andy, I think that you have some questions.
Yeah.
Some of them are obviously about if we will be able to download your workbook.
Yeah, so I'm just putting 2 links into the chat. So I've just put a link to the time-based blog posts and also to the Sweet Spot newsletter in the chat. Right, now let's look at the questions.
And you can also send it to me, so I send it to all of the people who register.
I can do that. I will do that in a moment. Yes. So yeah, Ziona, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I apologize if I am incorrect. The demo workbook, unfortunately, can't be downloaded because the London Cycle Hire data, they were very sensitive about sharing it. You can construct all the data sets and all the charts. You can construct all the charts using Tableau sample superstore, but so I'm very sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at some of these questions. Pete says the data set of fatalities by state doesn't have much variance. How would you improve that, or what chart would you use instead? I'm not quite sure what you mean, Pete, I'm afraid. You might have to clarify whether you mean the line chart, the line chart or the highlight table. So I might come back to that question if you get a chance to clarify what you mean. I'm trying to find the line chart. Where's fatality? Oh yeah, I'm looking at my slides, but of course that's in Tableau. Will says, when I teach data viz, my only rule to never break is that time passes from left to right. Is that because I know Western language? Am I excluding audiences in India, China, and Japan by teaching this? Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Time goes from left to right. Is that universal, or is it a Western reading culture, a facet of the way we read in the West? I'll tell you, Will, the answer is not quite known. And again, if you read Mind in Motion by Barbara Tversky, she discusses this. She's done some research in this. Some people in China and Japan who read right to left also read time charts right to left. But they've found there's also been a lot of research in cultures that read right to left. They still read charts left to right. So I think the answer is unknown, I would say. Pete, right, let's go back to Pete's thing. The highlight table after the drought table. The highlight table after the drought table. Oh, right, okay, so I understand you. Okay, so Pete's asking a question. So there's not much variance in the time-based period of this. What chart would I use instead? Well, I'd have to think a bit longer about an answer to this, Peter, but I think that, right, so I'll go back to the end. This is a good chart as part of your analytical exploration because it shows that every month the variance, it shows that every month across the US, it's always California, Texas, and Florida. I guess if I was an analyst, I'd start to think, well, what about my state? Does my state have some sort of month or temporal variance? I would be drawing a timeline with a breakdown for every state. And instead of total fatalities, maybe I'd be looking at percent difference from previous month, maybe not. So the answer to the question, Pete, is I don't know, but I know that with Tableau, I could play around and find the best articulation. Yes. Tosin asked in chat, Mind in Motion by Barbara Tversky. Yes, that is the book I was talking about. Okay, Joe Corpy asks, what kind of chart choice brought the pop-up box over a heap mapped data set? What kind of chart choice brought the pop-up box? I'm guessing you are referring to this. So I think Joe is asking what kind of chart type was this? So assuming I'm answering your question correctly, Joe. Yes, you're saying yes. So this is, so what's on the screen, the line chart here is embedded in a tooltip. And it's one of the powers you have in Tableau is to embed a chart inside a tooltip. So this code, you can tweak it, but Tableau can insert it correctly. And what it actually is this chart. This chart just shows fatalities by hour over time. And what you can see here is this little filter is the action that the tooltip uses to drill down from all US states to all days to the day that you've hovered over. I mean, I've done a dual axis to add a bit of adornment, but essentially it's just you can put any chart type in here, but keep them simple. For for a bit of advice, the simpler the chart, the more successful these will be.
And Andy, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but we still have 2 speakers to go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. I will happily stop talking.
I would love to have you for hours, but yes, I'm not sure that the attendee will stay.
Gosh, I'm sorry. I tell you what, I always hate overrunning. So look, everybody, you're all amazing. I'm going to stay for about 45 minutes as well and enjoy the next.
And if you want to answer more questions on the Q&A, you can also. Without without giving you any order, Andy, please.
That's fine. Over to you.
Yeah, Andy, wait. I will have some great pictures that RJ showed me. So I take some photos. It's about his collections of historical charts. Okay. If you can wait a little bit, yeah.
So let me introduce our next speaker, who is Donabel. I don't know why we have the Q&A here on my screen, but that's fine. So Donabel Santos is a Tableau accredited trainer. She's a principal at Cotgreave World Solution. And I really love your YouTube channel, Donabel. And I'm sure that you will make an awesome presentation. She will present today a presentation about LODs and table calc. Donabel, I will stop sharing and you can totally take over when you are ready.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I'm more nervous before starting the whole webinar or now that I'm starting right after Andy. So thank you so much. It's been great. It's been a pleasure to watch Andy. I can just listen to you for many hours as well. So I think I'm just gonna switch the topic a little bit. Let me share my screen and let me see here. And just as a tech check, can you see my screen? Okay, awesome. So thank you so much. So the topic that I'm going to present today is all about table calcs and LODs. When I first pitched this presentation to Annabelle, I was really thinking of like maybe a lot of demos, but I was thinking it might be good to just reintroduce table calcs and LODs just to kind of have a big rounded introduction. So my name is Donabel Santos. We may have already encountered each other. We might have already met on social media. So I use the handle SQLBell there. So what is table calcs and LODs? In my head, table calcs and LODs are just like the superheroes of calculations. And the reason for that is because it allows us to ask questions of our data that are otherwise hard to answer. And we may not realize it because we might think, oh, LOD, that's complicated. Table calc, that's complicated, but really it makes a lot of things much easier for us. So if we are encountered with the request, oh, I need to rank my data. Well, the answer is, yeah, we can do that with our table calculation. If somebody comes back to us and tells us, oh, I need to compare this number to another number. And I think Andy has also shown a lot of these examples in his demos. Yeah, we can do that with table calculations. Somebody comes to us, really challenging our calculations muscles. Hey, I need to do some cohort analysis. Again, we can do that with some of these calculations. We can do that with a level of detail expression. And oh, on top of that, I also need to do some competitive analysis. I need to be able to compare my number with numbers from my competitors. Again, we can easily say yes, because a lot of these functionalities are baked into Tableau using some of these calculations. So kind of stepping back a little bit, let's get to know table calculations again. A lot of you probably already use table calculations, but again, kind of just dialing back, getting ourselves reacquainted with these concepts. So I think the biggest thing to remember about table calculation is table calculations work on aggregations. And again, in the demo earlier, we've seen Andy, he's taken some of the values that are grouped. So it could either be a sum, a minimum, a maximum. We put a calculation on top of these group numbers. And the other thing about table calculations, and I think this is for me personally, when I try to understand kind of a new concept, a new feature, I look to the name first. So what does table calculation really mean? And to me, it is calculation on the table. It's a calculation in the table. And you're probably thinking right now, well, that doesn't make sense. And I totally agree with you. It doesn't make sense until we visualize it. So in here, what we mean by that is anything that we produce in Tableau will, whether it's a line chart, a bar chart, a heat map, all of those are actually built on top of a series of numbers. So for example, right now we have a line chart, but when we visualize, so if I duplicate this crosstab, if I duplicate this line chart to a crosstab, what we're going to see is we're really just working off of a series of numbers. And when we are talking about table calculations, what we're saying is we're working off of these numbers, not the underlying row-based data or records that we have in our data source, not those. We're working off of these numbers that we're seeing on the canvas, that we're seeing on the screen. So table calculations, what else do we need to remember about table calculations? Table calculations, they're very powerful, but they're also very sensitive. And what we mean by that is they rely on the viz a lot. They depend on the layout. So where we put our dimensions. So for example, you put region first or segment first, you put that in rows and columns. All of those will affect your table calculation. What else? There is also this concept of scope. So we can group a lot of our data and we can choose to limit our calculations and then just reset that for a second group. Our table calculations always have some kind of dependency. We always move the calculations somewhere. So we need to define what direction we want the calculation to go. So it could either be left to right, could be top to bottom, could be in a Z pattern. So those are how we can move the calculations over. And calculations are also heavily influenced by filters, which means if we take something out, Tableau doesn't see it anymore. Therefore, it can't do a calculation on something that's not in your canvas. So again, table calculations are very powerful, but they're very sensitive. Now, I've also put a couple of asterisks in these four items. So layout and filters, there's a fine print there. It's not always going to be affected by layout. We can lock the dimensions that our table calculations are attached to. And also, in terms of filters, not all filters are the same. There are certain filters that will not affect table calculations. Okay, so again, as we move things around, the numbers will change. So for example, in here, as we move the dimensions we have in rows or columns, they will affect the numbers. We will get a different number for our table calculations, but it doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means we're trying to answer a different question altogether. So just to quickly demonstrate a table calculation, so I have a text table right now, and let's just add a running total. So when, sorry, not a running total, a percent of total. When we think of percent of total, we're thinking of taking a number and dividing that by another number. So just by looking at this, let's take a look at 2018 for Central. We can take this number and we can decide to divide it by another number. But then at this point, depending on our question, we might decide to divide it by that number over there, maybe by that number over there, or by this number over there. And again, these are the things that that table calculations bring. Like, it is easy to do this in Tableau. We just need to understand how table calculations behave and how they work. So a quick way to do that on top of your measures, because remember, table calculations work on top of an aggregation or a number. In here, in this viz, we only have a single pill that has a measure. So this is sum of sales. We have a series of quick table calculations, and these are the most common ones that we use. So I definitely recommend that take advantage of the quick table calculation and then just make some tweaks later on. In here, what we can see is running total, difference, percent difference. The one common trait for these table calculations is there is a lot of dependency. When I'm creating a running total, I need to know where I'm running. Am I going from left to right? Am I going to from top to bottom? So again, that's something to keep in mind when we're working with table calculations. But right now, let's just add our percent of total. So in here, quick table calculation, percent of total. And we can see that the original number that we had, they're not there anymore. We are dealing with a brand new set of measures. This is not your sum of sales. This is a calculation on top of your sum of sales. And the percent of total is a great example because all we need to really look for is 100%. That kind of already gives us a visual cue of how the calculation is moving. If we decide to change the direction and the scope, we can click on the pill that has a table calculation, and we are given a couple of options. We can either use the compute using, which starts appearing when you have a table calculation, and we can define both direction and scope. So right now, by default, it's table across, meaning it's going from left to right. But we can change this to table down or pane down or table, which is a Z pattern. When we're more comfortable with table calculations, we can go to the table calculation editor and then make some finer adjustments there. So in here on the drop down, if we wanted to change our scope and our direction, again, if we wanted to move this from top to bottom, we can go to table down. And we can see that the percent, the 100% now switches from the rightmost to the bottom part of the screen. Now, the other thing to remember about table calculations is there's more to the table calculations than just the expression. I think sometimes when we develop calculations in Tableau, we tend to look at the expressions behind them. So for example, going back to this table calculation, if I open a brand new calculated field editor, let's actually just maximize that. If I open a brand new calculated field editor, and if I drag this pill that has a table calculation, we can see, oh, there's an expression. That's all I need to know about table calculations. But I'm going to caution you to think that there's actually more to it than just that. The table calculations, the directions, and the scope, we can't see it in that expression. We're going to have to work side by side with the table calculation editor to really understand how it's behaving. So again, don't just rely on that expression that you see on screen and think that, yeah, that explains everything, because it doesn't. So table calculations is kind of like a two-part calculation. So that's a very, very brief and quick introduction to table calculations. Now let's move on and let's take a look at LODs. So LODs, what is an LOD? So LOD stands for level of detail expressions. It is very similar to your table calculations because it also works on aggregates. So again, now we're going to have some choices that we're going to need to make when we are working with aggregates. Do we need to use table calcs? Do we need to use level of detail expressions? And we're going to answer that shortly. But the thing with level of detail expressions is it's a calculation that may have a different detail than what you're showing on your canvas. And what we mean by that is, by default, how does Tableau work? So right now I have a very, very simple worksheet in here. We only have a grand total. So what's the level of detail of this number? Well, I have sum of sales and I don't have any discrete dimensions anywhere else in my canvas, which means this is my grand total. It's not sliced up by anything else. This $2.297 million value, that will disappear the moment you drag another dimension. Like if you needed to reference that grand total, you will lose that number because the moment you start adding more things to your canvas, it changes the granularity or the level of detail of your measure. So in here, we are dealing with the same exact sum of sales, but the meaning has changed the moment we dragged over additional pills. So for level of detail expressions, they also rely on the viz, but this is sometimes. It really depends on the type of LOD. So there are 3 LODs. You can think of them as like triplets. We have an LOD. So we're going to call this first LOD as fixed. It's like a grumpy cat. And it's because it doesn't care. Doesn't care what else is in your canvas. All it looks at is the expression that it has, and that's how it calculates the numbers. We have a second cat. We'll call this next cat include, and include is very inclusive. So even if some of these dimensions are actually not on your screen, it's going to consider them all when it's doing the calculation. And we also have, you know, kind of, I guess, a grumpy cat as well, but not so much. We have exclude. Exclude just means, you know, I'm still going to look at the canvas. I'm going to consider whatever else in the canvas, and I might take things away. So those are the LODs. So to say that LODs are completely independent is actually inaccurate. It really depends on what that LOD is. And sometimes they depend on the filter. So we'll get to that shortly. In terms of syntax, curly brace, I think this is the only construct in Tableau that uses curly braces. In here, we can specify the type. So it's either the fixed, the include, or the exclude. And then sometimes we can provide a dimension or a series of dimensions separated by a comma. So after that, we're also going to have to provide what we call an aggregate or a grouped function. So typically, this is your minimum, your maximum, your count, your average. So all of those are your aggregations. Okay, so just a quick demo for LOD, and a lot of you probably have already seen this, but if I were to create a fixed LOD, so let's say a fixed grand total, remembering our syntax, it's going to be curly brace, it's going to be fixed. And right now, if the number that I am trying to recreate is this 2.297 million, I can use this worksheet as my cheat sheet. So how do I get 2.297 million? Well, if I have sum of sales somewhere, and if I have no discrete dimensions anywhere else. So all I need to do right now is I need to provide the colon and then use sum of sales. So creating some worksheets that have the numbers that you have, it's a great way to help you construct those level of detail expressions. So just a quick example here. Let's bring over our grand total. Let's create this text table. Let's just move things around a little bit, move the measure names here. So how is it different from our default sales? Well, now remember the fixed LODs, kind of our grumpy cat that doesn't want to look at anything else in the canvas. Well, if we drag over our category, we can see in here that it will retain the 2.297 million. So it is not considering that there is already another discrete dimension that's on screen. Now, also, it's a smart aggregation, just because if we go to the analytics tab and then add totals, if I double click on totals right now, it's not like it's going to triplicate that result. No, it's still 2.297 million. So that's a very simple example of level of detail. But for now, you probably have seen this already as well, order of operations. If you've been trying to avoid order of operations, if you want to tap into those superpowers, you're going to have to learn a little bit about how the operations work in Tableau. And the most important pieces to remember here is where things are. Your fixed level of detail expressions right there, your include and exclude, although they're level of detail expressions, they belong to a different level, in a different area here in the order of operations. And your table calcs, they're right there. Why is that important? Well, if we extrapolate where they really fit into this line, your table calcs are right here, your include and exclude, they're right below the dimension filters, and the fixed LOD, they're right underneath the context filters. The more things are above these calculations, it means the more things will affect them. So again, learning a little bit more about the order of operations will help us explain how the calculations are working. So again, this will be your best friend the moment you start working with more table calculations and level of detail expressions. And I've lost my place. Here we go. Okay, so when do we need to use table calcs or level of detail expressions? So let's just recap. They both work on aggregates. When you're working with aggregates, you need to do another calculation on top of that aggregate. You're looking at either table calc or LODs. But the one big difference between them is if you need a lot of dependencies with your viz, if you're moving things around, you need a table calc. If you need to rank, if you need to multiply, or to, let's say, if you need to subtract this with this number, if you need to add that to the previous number, to the next number, you're looking at table calculations. If you need a little bit of freedom from what you're showing on screen, chances are you need a level of detail expression. So let me see here. And this is the time that I start panicking because I have lost where my slides are. Here we go. So let's do a showdown. Can you do a moving average? Well, in this case, the moving average moves, which means it depends on the numbers that you have on screen. And in this case, we are looking at table calculations. So table calculations allow us to do moving averages. It allows us to do running totals. Again, we've seen that in the example that Andy had. Table calculations, we can add that on top of our aggregation. So on the drop down, quick table calculation, maybe in this case, a moving average. We can always make some changes or adjustments to our table calculations by going back to that pill and then editing the table calculation. And each different type of calculation will have different sets of options. So there's a lot of flexibility in that sense. Let's do one more, actually a couple more showdowns. Can we do cohorts? Well, yeah, but the cohort, think of cohort as groups. We need to be able to assign things or values to certain groups. And the group membership does not have to depend on whether we're displaying them on screen or not displaying them on screen. And the answer is yes, we can do cohorts, but we can do cohorts with level of detail expressions. So for example, let's take our customers and let's take a look at all the times that they have bought from us. So I can bring over order dates and display all the individual orders that they have. In this case, we can see that each individual customers, there's a first time that they order. So we can decide that that could be their cohort. Maybe we're looking at the first year that they bought from us. So again, just changing this view. We can change this and show this as the first. So the first date, what's the first date that they ordered from us? Maybe this is going to be their cohort, or maybe it's going to be the first year that they bought from us. So again, you can use this as a cheat sheet when you're creating your table calcs. So in this case, let's create a cohort. And we're going to use fixed because we don't care whether whether other dimensions are in your canvas. We want the cohort to stay the same. So cohort, customer ID. And in this case, we're going to mimic what we have on screen, but we're also going to make adjustments because we're only looking at the year of the order date. So the first year of the order date will be that customer's cohort. So just to double check, we're going to move this from measures to dimensions because it's simply just a tag. And just to double check, did we get the right value? And the answer is yes. So for the kind of the final demo in here, can they work together? And the answer is absolutely yes. You can use level of detail expressions, especially for fixed LODs. They can return either a dimension or a measure. We can use that together with another table calculation. So here's an example. What if we're looking at our customers and we want to know which of our 2018 cohort customers purchased at most 5 times in a certain year? Let's do this a little bit slowly. So in here, we're looking at cohort. And let's change this and make this into, I'm just going to set this to standard first and change the font so it's a little bit bigger. Okay. So what we're looking at is the pattern or behavior of each of our individual cohorts. So when is the transaction happening? Well, that's from our order date. And in here, we can see already a pattern. But what we're asking is which of these customers, so 2018 cohort, which of them purchased at most 5 times in a certain year? So we're looking at that year and we're looking at only a 2018 cohort. So again, when we're thinking about this, what are the things that we need to do? Well, we need to be able to tag individual customers as well. How many times did they buy in certain years? So again, kind of removing this, just to visualize this, we're looking at our customer ID and we're looking at our years, and we want to know. So let's say in here, order ID, let's put that on text, count distinct. Well, we want to know how many of them purchased at least or purchased one time, twice, and at most. So we stop at 5. Okay. So let's create another fixed LOD. So create a number of purchases per year. So this is per customer per year. And our fixed LOD in this case, we can fix this to our customer ID. And what we're looking for, actually, we're not fixing it just to customer ID. So again, if I'm looking at my cheat sheet, I'm seeing 2 discrete dimensions here. I need to add that year of order date there as well. So comma, year of order date. And then the aggregation that we need is already on my canvas. By the way, I'm going to profess that I'm very lazy. So I will probably create this worksheet first so that I can simply just drag and drop everything that I need in that expression. So this is my number of purchases per year. So now that we have a lot of these in place, we can start answering this question. So we are looking at, so the number of purchases per year, and we're looking at certain years. So let's pull our order date in here and let's display the filter. So if we change our mind, if we're not looking at 2020 anymore, we can definitely make that change. So let's show this filter, move this here as well. Let's just make this into a single value dropdown or a slider. And in here, we're looking at our number of customers, which is the count distinct of our order IDs. Okay, and change this to a line. So these are all of our customers. However, we are looking at this from a cohort perspective. So each individual cohort. So now we see our 2018 cohort, 2019 cohort, 2020 cohort. Let me just quickly add the labels. So I'm going to take this count distinct. So control drag that to label. Very busy, I know. So we're going to do a little bit of a hack. We're going to go to the label and we're going to set this to only show when we're highlighting those measures. And let's set this entire view. So what that does is when I highlight 2018, it gives me the numbers. So to answer this question, how many of our 2018 cohort customers, which I've already highlighted, how many of them purchased at most? This is the trick for this question. We're looking for at most. I'm not looking for 5 times. I'm not looking for 8. I'm not looking for only the ones that have purchased five times. I'm looking for this and this and this and this. I need to be able to add them. Can we do that? And yeah, we've seen it. It's running total. So now we're going to put our, so in this case, we're going to put our table calculation on top of our LOD. We're going to make our running total. And if this is our question, the answer is, oh, and I need to make sure that I change my my label, because by default, it stays with the original pill. So let's just change that. And as we highlight number 5, it's 473. In a few clicks, I'm able to answer that question. And I think I have a few more minutes, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to quickly switch this over because this is where it gets really powerful. I'm going to change this question to at least. Same data, same type of question, but now I've changed this to at least. How do we do this? So let's just clear this table calculation. Let's remove that total. If we're changing the question to at least, we're no longer counting from 1 to 2 to 3 all the way to 5. We either need to start at 5 or we can reverse the counting. Can we do that? You betcha. So in here, add our table calculation. It's still going to be a running total right now. But we already know this is not what we want. When we edit this table calculation, again, this is where advanced table calculations are coming in. For now, we're going to lock this to specific dimensions. It's always going to be based on these dimensions that we have on screen. But the moment you add your specific dimensions, you get additional options. And one of those options is really allowing you to control how table calculations work. And in this case, is the sort order. Instead of the default one, which is basically 1 all the way to the maximum, we're going to reverse it. We're going to say that the sort order is based on, so custom is based on the number of purchases per year, and we are going to base this on the average. We're saying this is average because each one of these, if there's, let's say, one customer on 7, then the value is 7. If I have 5 customers on 6, then it will give me 30 if I leave it as a sum. So we're just going to make sure that it stays at 7 and 6 and 5. And we're also just going to reverse this to descending. And to answer our question, let's copy that over to our label. This is, at least we have 20 customers. 20 customers. There are some of them that purchased 5 times, 6 times, and 7 times. So that is my very, very quick demo on table calcs and LODs. There are so many amazing resources, especially on the Tableau website. These are like the Bibles of table calcs and LODs, top 10 table calcs, top 15 LODs. And my shameless plug, if you are looking to refresh your table calc, LODs or basic calculations, I do have a playlist. So I'm on YouTube. My handle is Donabel. And with that, I would like to say thank you. I probably feel like I'm like running a marathon at this point. Thank you so much.
That was fantastic, Donabel. You see, no need to be worried. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
I don't have enough word to say it, but I will let Cedar like a comment and take some question. It was like,
I was just going to say exactly what you were. First of all, if you're not following Donabel on Twitter, first of all, you're making several mistakes. I would spend some time right now on her page, YouTube, and on Twitter. I know I have a lot of questions that I see her answering in some of her videos, so I would definitely do that. And I know that, one of the things I was excited about with this session is that these are the things, the non-sexy versions of Tableau. Like LODs are not something that's going to turn your visualization into something Iron Viz worthy, but they will help you do your job better. So I'm really happy that we got Donabel on. Just a couple of questions. I think one I was actually curious about, because I actually don't know the answer to this, around performance. The question was from an anonymous person saying, my LODs are performing slowly. How should I go about turning them into table calculations?
I think they're not completely interchangeable. I think there are times where they could be interchangeable, but again, kind of going back to table calcs, they behave very differently because there's a lot of dependencies. So if what you need is complete independence from your viz, like a fixed LOD, I don't think the table calc can replace that. Now, in terms of performance, the table calcs, actually, they happen at the Tableau level. So for example, in your Tableau desktop, and I apologize for my handwriting, for Tableau desktop, as you drag and drop, you connect to your data source, and your LODs, and right now very specific to the fixed LODs, your LODs are happening at the data source level. So I work a lot with SQL Server, and if you run what's called a profiler, you can see that it gets translated to what's called a subquery. So it's a query on the data source. So I think if there is a performance issue, that might be one thing to look at. How is your connection to your data source? What is the performance at the data source level? The table calculations, they're happening at the Tableau desktop level. So it's going to be highly influenced by maybe the server, how powerful that server is. So that Tableau server or Tableau desktop machine influences that a lot.
Cool. Yes, very helpful. And I think, one thing I would echo there is really, understanding, and I'm sure you already have a video on this, but understanding, I think, how table calcs and LODs manipulate your data, I think is definitely, to me, was a big aha moment in trying to really sort out what was happening and order of operations as well. While I get the next question, do you mind showing your resources screen again? I know
Yes.
a few people were trying to look at some of the resources that you had. Another question, I have to report by financial year. LODs work well with calendar years, but I struggle to find financial years. I would say, same with in any sort of fiscal calendar. Is there an easy way of using LODs within financial or fiscal calendars without a lot of background manipulation of dates?
I think my recommendation will be outside of LODs and table calcs. If you find yourself always needing to have a different set of dates to work with, I think it might be, I would recommend looking at having another data set that just has all those dates. So from, sometimes we call this, if you have a data warehouse, it's called a dimension. So creating another table that has the list of, let's say, your fiscal dates and all the other attributes, like the weeks, the months. I think having that handy might be helpful instead of trying to manipulate that. Because remember, when you create a calculation, it happens for all of your workbooks, which means you're repeating that work. So
Yep. That makes sense to me. I know I've run into that in education as well, because they have their own calendar.
terms, yeah, exactly.
So same sort of thing. Cool. Well, thank you, Donabel. If you do have a second, there are a few other questions in the Q&A. If you have a second to look through some of them, but want to make sure we get to our last presentation. So I'm gonna borrow this from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And here, let me skip ahead. Thank you, Annabelle, for introducing Donabel. And our last presentation, certainly not least, is from Alex, who is a Tableau Zen Master and social ambassador. So you can find him on Twitter at AlexSoft. And currently senior data visualization consultant at Action Analytics. He's a passionate data practitioner working as a senior consultant, and like SQL Bell, has a blog where you can look at some of his work on visdiff.blogspot.com. And he's been posting on since 2013. So I would definitely check out some of his content. I will try to post a link in a second while he presents. But without any other ado, Alex, take over and talk fast dashboard prototyping with containers.
Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be here to share some of my best practices with you. First, since Andy has a very short time, and I would like to show some pictures I had recently when I had a party with RJ Andrews. Yeah, he showed us some great historical books and charts that people has done many years ago. So this is a map about Japan. Okay, I will do this pretty quickly, not necessarily in order.
We can't see your screen yet, Alex.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So, yeah, this is during a little party with RJ Andrews in San Francisco in October, 2 months ago. So yeah, he showed us some very interesting charts and books.
Oh, I love that. I love that one. That's amazing.
Yeah, and this is what some of the books, Harriet Martineau, just quickly, okay, to show what it got.
Just Alex, just if people want to find out more about the data viz history, if they join the Data Viz Society, which we can share links to, on the Slack channel, RJ and Jason Forrester and a bunch of people share a whole bunch of things about data viz history, and you can follow RJ on his voyage of discovery for all these old things. Yeah, amazing.
Maybe Annabelle can invite him as the next speaker.
Yeah.
This is RJ, and this is Jonathan Drought, who is the Tableau Zen Master Hall of Fame. This is
I have that book.
Oh, really? Great. Yeah.
And in fact, I have both printed books. There you go. Yeah.
Wow.
107 years old, this one. Incredible.
Many interesting stuff. Yeah. This is the books. Voilà. And about the time directions from left to right. I once had I wrote a very small post about this one, about the one chart by Mike Cisneros. He was the master as well. He had a chart like this, and who has a timeline from top to bottom, and I just suggest another way, which is from bottom to top, which can really change the impact. Okay, in some cases, yeah, in some particular cases, we can use a different directions of time.
Yeah.
About the Cotgreave has, Donabel has a really great talk, and it's not an easy talk. It's not an easy topic to talk about. It can be very difficult, yeah, to explain a lot of things, yeah. So I wrote a post about this, about the LOD versus non-LOD. Most of the time, so I wrote a post about what's the interchangeable. Many times we can actually create a calculation, use either. Okay, they are equivalent. Sometimes one is simpler than the others. Yeah. So if you wish, you can find this in my blog. Yeah. So that the 20 cases, which is initially by Tableau master Ken Fleury. He used LOD to create the 20 use cases, and I found most of them can be implemented in table calculations as well. Yeah. All right. So today my topic is about fast prototyping of a business dashboard, which is I think which in certain sense which is a little bit different from infographics or some non-business dashboard. Okay, I will show what it is. It is more structured, I think, and it can be more structured and more about the numbers and the logics. Okay, less fancier. So I'm going to share the kind of best practices that's from the team I work with, and we kind of found our own style and our approach to quickly ramp up to create the dashboard. First, we do not need any data. Okay, when we prototype a dashboard, right? I mean, people can actually prototype a dashboard from a piece of paper, or use popular graphical software like Figma or Scratch. Yeah, but I'm going to show an alternative, another option, which is create the dashboard with Tableau without data. Okay, we don't really need that. Yeah, it's actually pretty simple. Let's first try to format this. Okay, we like Arial. Okay, and we like it to the letter to be white by default. Yeah. It seems we cannot fix it's a really, and maybe a bug. Okay. Yeah. We cannot fix okay, Arial, and we like black background, and we really like make it tall. Okay, we like vertical style because vertical give us a lot of interesting advantages. First, when we people, business people like to subscribe. Our audience like to subscribe to our dashboard, and so when they receive their daily consumption of a dashboard and they receive a picture, and they may view it on their phone. So it's easier for them to scroll through the dashboard, and you can see also on your desktop you have a mouse, right? The mouse only has vertical scroll, no horizontal scroll. I'll talk about it a little bit more later. So first, so we can already create the titles. Okay, give it a title. Yeah. And okay, sorry, we should create a put it into a vertical container. We do not need this tiled container. So now we have a title, okay, within the dashboard, within the vertical vertical container. And by the way, we can float a kind of a notepad. The notepad for us to take notes. Make it blue so that it's more visible. Yeah, we cannot directly drag them into the white space, but we can move it beyond. Okay. Sorry, it's okay. Yeah, we can move it here, and we can actually make it big. And format text on top. Yeah, so we can write the take notes here. All right. So then we can add more sections. Okay. And other sections, say section 1. Okay, 28. Sorry, a little. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes people are struggling, usually kind of struggle with storytelling. Okay, so the vertical being designed a vertical design, it actually imposes a structure with guided storyline. So that actually requires tell us to put most important things on top. Okay, so it's give us a structure from top to bottom. Yeah. So when we design a dashboard, we always put most important things on top and the less important at bottom. So we can actually create a dashboard that's more or less like writing an article, a post, yeah, something like that. Yeah. So we don't have to worry about too much about the storyline, how to create a storyline. And if we follow this order, we will have a storyline. Yeah. And so the vertical is our primary storyline, but we can have secondary storyline horizontally. Yeah. So let's put a horizontal container here, and we can, yeah, say set the height, and then we can put our KPIs like a sales. Right, we can put our say profit, and well, profit ratio, and this is the terms we are familiar because they're from the Superstore dataset. Yeah. So by double click this handle, okay, we can select the container above these three boxes, and let's distribute content evenly. Okay, so they are kind of equal size, and we can add borders to the boxes, so they are more kind of give us more perception, so better perception, so where we know where they are, and then we can add more sections like that. Say, create set the height, and put sale. We can say sales trend with bars, right? Yeah. Profit ratio, and since it's a ratio, we can use a different chart type. Yeah. So because these two, the previous two are dollars, and this one is percentage. So we may choose a different chart type. And we add a. So voila. So this is a design process that can help us. Okay, can help us to kind of visualize for ourselves. Okay, Okay, to get our thought straight. Okay, to help us think. How it's easy, right? We do not need to have any data. we do not have to, think about data. And in this way, we can also try to think what kind of data do we need, right? So actually, our dashboard will usually, we create it to answer questions. So we are going from a reverse kind of direction to create this dashboard. So first we have questions and we try to answer them and then we go to look for data instead of, hey, here's a data set, try to get something out of it. Yeah, that's that may not be the right way to do it. Yeah. So with this, we can further, okay, create things like so here is so maybe 40K, which is the current status, okay, of the sales, okay, of this month. Yeah, so that's something we really care about. Yeah. And also it is a 10% month over month over last month. Yeah. So that's something we care about, or our audience care about. And there's something like that. So we can create all this one by one, and so we can have a kind of a dashboard already. Okay, and for the trend, from the version 0 can be a purely text based, okay, dashboard. Yeah. However, afterwards we can replace some of them to be, okay, to be images. Okay. Yeah. So we can replace this, with this, So with certain images, and we can use the same image. Feed center images. And replace them by just some static image, okay? So just to see how it looks like, whether this is good, and in the process, we can also share this with stakeholders or team members to review and to get feedback and to get approval, or we can, tweak and change. So which has a low cost of time, okay, and we can do this quickly. Then we can for the sections, maybe this section is sales, and this is about profit. So we can have a section like this to lay out quickly. So this is a way of wow, it seems that this is not a line. So, so let's make this, yes. So now it's a line, yeah. We can still keep the borders if we wish. Okay, yeah. So we can remove the borders later if we wish. So this is basically a our approach. So I do not want to spend more time to go to the details, but here are some of the so here are the steps that I already created. So we can also write more specs. Okay, if you have to hand it over to another colleague of yours to implement the dashboard, so you can use this as a spec writing template. Yeah. So voila, this is a get more details into about the design. Here's the notes, and here, I can add colors, make it really look like it will be, how it will be look. And so this is the one with more static images. How it will look like. Okay, how it will look like, and still we have no data at all. Okay, have no data at all. So let me just go through quickly with the notes I summarized. So we can prototype with no data, and the version 0 with just pure text. You write down what you want to put on the dashboard and how it will be organized, and the vertical for primary storyline. Okay, you lay out the sections just from top to bottom. And the horizontal for secondary storyline, you can, within each section, you can have your whatever storyline you wish, and the right specs as we go. Okay, and the drag and drop. So for example, we can, if we want this section to be on top, we can always drag and drop, right? So add borders for better visualization to the designer, and for the initial design, it's it looks easier for people to understand, and this allows us to fast iterate, okay, about the design. Version 1 with static object with static images, we do not have to deal with some specific data, and interact with stakeholders. And we do not need another graphics tool to learn. Because I think for business dashboard, we have less about all those fancy object. Voila. And so this one, okay. Finally, I hooked up with the Superstore data source. And this is the result. Okay, so I just so voila. So this is the this section. There's another section, and this is another section. Yeah. So this is just my kind of a quick way to create the dashboard. Yeah. That's my presentation, and thank you very much for attending. And if you have questions, I would love to answer them. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alexander. It was very interesting, and especially the fact that you are developing this prototype in Tableau. I think it's quite good because you get already your stakeholder having a look at what the final product will look like in Tableau and not in PowerPoint or something else. And also that you, by doing that, you already organize, see the space that you will need to display the information, and maybe the stakeholder already see that he needs some space, like they cannot have like 200 visualization on it. Can you explain how you did maybe this drill down when you click? Is it a parameter or is it a show and hide container?
Oh, it's just a show and hide button. Yeah, it's a show and hide button with we can add, yeah.
Oh, but that's good.
Yeah, with some icons there.
So for instance, I had like some question. So a lot of people are like thanking you, obviously. And one question is, where do you find the static image?
Oh, static image is we can create just our own, and those static images. Yeah, just because we just need the vertical bar and the horizontal bars and some line chart, which is just a representative of the chart we are going to make. Okay, which is just a chart type we use to when we need to show something. Yeah.
And I also really like that you do it without data, because often my issue is like I'm working in a bank, and if I do it already a prototype with prod data, I eventually showing data that I should not show. So that is like very, very good. I may steal some of your ideas next time.
Yeah.
So I think it's time, if you want to add anything, otherwise I think it's time to say goodbye. And so because it's already late, so we won't like to be honest. I will share my screen one more time. Yes, share my screen. Let's try to do that correctly. I'm not very good at sharing screen and everything. I'm better like doing Tableau demos. So thank you very much to everyone for joining. I wish you a beautiful end of the year. We will send like an email very soon with all the content from the presenter today, and maybe some next presentation that you can see in December. Our next meeting will be in January the 20th. So for 2022, all our sessions will be happening on the last and here there is a mistake, because they will be happening on the last Thursday of the month. So it will be January 27th. You see, we are like very prepared. We don't have a splash page already prepared for you, but it will also come on a beautiful email. So we will see you next year. Thank you very much for joining. Have a good day, good evening.